Welcome back, and congratulations to Devin on the birth of his second child. Devin, thanks for joining us again. We're happy to have you. Tonight, we'll talk about how we're handling the running back landscape and Deshaun Watson's return. But before we get to all those topics and more, let's get to Vegas, as we always do. Kick it over to John Lee. John, tell us what's going on in Vegas this week.
Great week. We've only got 2 bye weeks. There are 2 bye teams this week. They happen to be awful teams, the Carolina Panthers and the Arizona Cardinals, at least from a DFS perspective. So we're not missing out on a whole lot this week. And, at the top of the boards, we've got the Cleveland Browns. Devin makes a comeback on the week that his team has the highest implied team total on the main slate, probably in years. They're at 27.3 points. And, oh, by the way, they have a new quarterback. Deshaun Watson could be chalk this week. That's gonna be something to chew over. We'll talk about that probably in the next 3 to 4 minutes. Aside from the Cleveland Browns being chalk against Houston, and they're away favorites, by the way, we've got 3 games above 50 points. So this is an unusual week because a lot of times this year we've had those 50-point games flexed to Sunday night, leaving not a whole lot. This week you got Kansas City at Cincinnati. So Patrick Mahomes versus Joe Burrow. Going to be really interesting there. You've got 2 very bad defenses, Jacksonville at Detroit with a 51-point over-under, and then Los Angeles Chargers at Las Vegas, 50.5 points. There's going to be a lot of scoring this weekend, and at least my initial read is that a lot of the projected rostership or ownership, if you will, seems to be off base. So this, at least as of Thursday night, is I'm more excited about this slate than I've been about any slate all year because of the potential upside and things being maybe a little bit different than we've seen so far. So a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, it's a good breakdown, and you're right. We've had some weeks that we've had to sort of feign excitement when we go through this Vegas section. This game has a 47-point total, right? But this might be the first time we've had 3 over 50 on the main slate all year. I mean, certainly in the last couple of months, that's for sure. So, it is very exciting. Will all those games get there? Who could say? 2 of those 3, right? Jacksonville at Detroit and Chargers at Raiders are teams that are maybe not the most elite offenses, and those totals are high because of the defenses. But we'll see if they get there, right? That's the fun. So let's move on to quarterbacks here. And Devin, we'll start with you, fresh off of what I'm sure is a lack of sleep, but I'm glad you're back. We're happy to have you. And before we get to you, let's go through a couple of injury updates here. Aaron Rodgers with his rib injury practiced in a limited fashion today. Looks like he's trending towards playing. He says he's going to play. I don't know if that matters. Justin Fields, to me, was a surprise with full practice today. And then also Lamar Jackson had a quad injury where he left practice Wednesday, but then returned to full practice today. So that seems like maybe it won't be that big a deal. I don't know if those injury updates do anything for you. Feel free to talk if they do, or tell us who you like if they don't.
Yeah, so I'm starting with Justin Herbert in cash at 7,200 against the Raiders. The Raiders' pass defense has been brutal this year. I mean, they're allowing the second most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Coming off a game where Geno Smith threw for 328 yards and 2 touchdowns. He just feels like the safest guy this week. I know Deshaun Watson's back. I'm not touching that one just because Cleveland can just run the ball 40 times in this game and very, very comfortably. I say very comfortably win this game, but they're probably going to lose that now that I just said that. But I mean, Nick Chubb could very easily have 22 carries. Kareem Hunt could have 10 to 15. And this could be just to run the ball, keep the ball simple. I mean, Watson's only been practicing for 2 weeks. And that's the biggest concern, right? Is he's only been in the building for 2 weeks. If he'd been in the building and acquainting been acclimated to the team, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable. Could they get inside the red zone and run the ball for a touchdown in Houston? Sure. Like, we can play that narrative all day long, but for me, it's Justin Herbert. And then I do like Geno Smith this week going up against the Rams as a GPP play. So I have Geno Smith right now at 3% rostered. And I don't know where the head of this, I don't know where this Rams team is at from a motivation standpoint. Bryce Perkins is starting. Cooper Kupp is out. Matt Stafford is out. They've cut basically every running back or benched every running back that they have on this team. I think Aaron Donald is out. So, this is a team that is coming off the Super Bowl that just may not be that motivated. And if we can get a 3% rostered quarterback, Geno Smith has thrown for 2 touchdowns and I think 10 of his 13 games this year, or 10 of his 12 games, something like that. So he's been a very consistent quarterback, cheap enough at 6,100 that I do like him, and I think he's going to go a little bit under rostered. Going down a little bit, Mike White at 5,400 against Minnesota. The way to beat Minnesota is through the air, and he's not sexy. He's not going to be someone that you're excited about clicking on. But I think there was a stat that said, and maybe this is my lack of sleep and delusion, but there's been 12 quarterbacks that have thrown for over 300 yards for the Jets, and only one has done it twice in the past 10 years, and that's Mike White. So he's a gunslinger. He's significantly better than Zach Wilson. And against Minnesota, they're not going to be able to run the ball with Zonovan Knight or whatever that guy's name is. What is it? Zonovan something.
Zonovan Bam Knight.
Yeah, Zonovan Knight. Or James Robinson, because Michael Carter's out, right? So this could be a game where Mike White is forced to throw the ball 40 plus times.
Yeah, it's interesting. And not to tease the wide receiver section too heavily, John, but we know that John's wide receiver plays drive quarterback. So is Garrett Wilson too chalky for you to play Mike White in tournaments? Because Garrett Wilson's popping to me, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes here. What do you like at quarterback, John?
Boy, I've got to respond to Devin coming off of a 2-week hiatus and naming Geno Smith and Mike White.
He said GPPs. Hey, you recommended Trevor Lawrence for every single week this year, and it hit last week finally. So let come on, give the devil his due here.
At least I can get behind the Justin Herbert play, but I don't know about the Geno Smith. That game could just be a slog, a run fest. You could see Kenneth Walker run the ball 25 times, and I just don't know if the Rams can muster enough offense to keep it back and forth. But that's one way or the other. From my perspective, I think in cash games this week, I think you go to the game in Detroit. Either you go with one side or the other. You go with Jared Goff against Jacksonville, or you go with Trevor Lawrence against Detroit. Both are sub 6K, 5,900, 5,300 respectively. In terms of points per dollar, they're about the best on the board. If you've got the money, the guy that I would recommend is Joe Burrow. In that potential shootout with Kansas City. But I don't think you need to spend a lot this week. Both of those guys project well for me. In terms of tournaments, Justin Herbert's on my list, so I won't.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, when have you ever been sorry about anything you said in this show?
I'm a new man. I'm a father of 2 now instead of a father of 1, so I'm trying to be different. I apologize.
You can't help it.
I apologize for cutting you off. However, Jared Goff is never a cash game play. Trevor Lawrence I can get behind. I'm fine with Goff as a GPP play, but you look at the guy's stats, and he hasn't thrown for over 250 yards in his last 4 games, and he's only done it once in his last 7. Yikes. His floor is way too low for me. I can get behind Lawrence, I think he's fine, but can't do Goff. I'd rather have Kenny Pickett at 5,200.
I'm not going to sit here and merit the, or argue the merits of Jared Goff in cash. What I'll say is that team has had a disproportionate number of touchdowns on the ground, as we've seen by Jamal Williams. I think he leads the league in rushing touchdowns. At some point that has to equilibrate. And you're looking at a Jacksonville Jaguars defense that is giving up 250, 330, 250, 250, 390 over their past 5 games. If he's going to pass 250 yards, this would be the week to do it. And, oh, by the way, he's 5,300. So he only needs to get you 15 points, which is what? 250 yards gets you 10, and then a touchdown. He's basically there.
Minus 1 for the inevitable pick that he'll throw.
Spend the extra 600. Go to T-Law, who I do think will be more popular. You can go that way, and I wouldn't fault you for it. I don't think you need to go basement diving, but I think that both of those quarterbacks are in play. The quarterback I want to talk about, and the quarterback everybody's going to be wondering about is Deshaun Watson. But before we get there, what about Aaron Rodgers in tournament play?
No. The guy's checked out. He literally just said that he's fine with them benching him.
Yeah. No. To be fair, I read the headline and then I read the quote. And the headline read differently than the quote to me. The quote is what I would have said if they would have asked me that question. I'm not disagreeing with the sentiment of your argument, Devin, but you've got Justin Fields against Aaron Rodgers. Can we agree that this game could shoot out?
Yes.
If Fields plays, but
I was going to say Rodgers is only in play if Fields plays, and I think you were going to say that too, John. Right?
Yeah, I was getting there, but this game is currently, I think, 44.5. Let me make sure that's right. Yeah, 44.5 Vegas total. If you told me on that game's going to score 55, I wouldn't be surprised with those two quarterbacks. And
the Bears
last
defense.
I looked, Aaron Rodgers is 2%, and he's got a new favorite receiver in the form of Christian Watson. I don't know. I like Aaron Rodgers. He's sub 6K. He's cheaper than Trevor Lawrence. Love him as a GPP play this week. Love him.
Yeah, I think if Fields plays, I don't hate it. You talked me into it. And also, Rodgers is the kind of guy who says to the media, yeah, go ahead and bench me, and then goes out and FUs everybody too. So I know we don't want to go down narrative street, because if we did, we would play Deshaun Watson, and that's the only quarterback we would recommend. But he's a strange fella. Isn't that what was the quote they said about him years ago, right? He's a weird cat, right? But and Christian Watson's scoring touchdowns from everywhere. So at least there's the capability to do it. It's Devin, I know you're rolling your eyes, but
the Bears' run defense is so bad, and that's the problem. Is that like they're one of, if not, they're a bottom 5 run defense.
Pass defense is horrible too.
No, their pass defense has been like pretty good overall because the run defense is so bad.
I feel like that game's got a better chance of shooting out than Seahawks Rams. And you said Geno Smith, so that's why I picked that game.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but the Packers scored 33 points last week, and Aaron Rodgers threw the ball 16 times.
Yeah. Well, he also left the game.
Yeah, he left the game and got whatever. I just don't know how much he cares. Like
they as a team threw more than 16 times.
They threw 22. Yeah. So
all right, let's ask the question in a different way. He's 2% projected in terms of ownership. Does he win a tournament more than 1 out of 50 times in this situation?
No.
You're crazy.
I'd say yes, because 50 is a lot of times, right? Yeah. I mean, he could throw for 302 or 250.
But to win a tournament, if Mike White does the same thing in that given week, then Like he
Mike
has to,
White is projected at higher ownership right now
I have
than Aaron Rodgers.
I have Mike White at 2.3%, but like,
okay, I've got one at 2 and the other at 3.2. We're
yeah, they're the
splitting
same.
hairs here, but
Yeah.
I
John, you're not going to get credit for differentiating between 2 and 3.
I
Sorry.
gave up on Aaron Rodgers a long time ago. I want the shiny new car that probably has like something broken under the hood, but at least it's shiny instead of some like rusted out Nissan that'll just get you there every now and then.
Travis Kelce, he's washed up.
Okay, yeah. One bad take.
Got him. All right.
I tried to come into this show being a new person, and you're sucking me right back in. Look at my face; it's already red.
We're not going to let you. You know, if you're a new person, we lose likes and comments, so we can't do it. We can't let you be that new person.
People will actually start to like me if I'm a new person, and then we'll lose viewership. So
yeah, we can't have that for the show.
No.
I can't play the heel. It's just not within me. Any other quarterbacks to mention, guys?
I'll mention one more. It's a shame that maybe this is a shout out to our buddy Phil Alexander, who apparently was having a Thursday night for himself, a man's night out is what he told us earlier. He's a big fan of air yards and regression towards the mean where air yards are concerned. Both of the Philadelphia Eagles receivers, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, pop on the air yards model this week. And as a result of that, you should really consider Jalen Hurts. Going up against Tennessee, that's a game that, depending on what happens, you know the Titans love to run the ball, but they can put up points. That's a game that could go. And Jalen Hurts at $8,000. He's the second highest price quarterback on the slate. I don't think people are going to spend up on him. So I think he'll go under-owned. And, we've seen he's a guy that can put up 100 yards rushing and some substantial number of yards passing as well. So don't be afraid to roster him in a double stack with those receivers and see if you can get some regression towards the mean, excuse me.
Yeah, good call there. At first I was thinking, yeah, boy, really going out on a limb with Jalen Hurts, but at $8K on this slate, that's a pricey dish. So I don't think a lot of people are going to go there.
No.
Devin, your face is telling me you have a thought on that.
No, the only other thing would be just like there's going to be some people that just call us out and say, you didn't mention Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow at all. And those guys are fine. Like they're it's kind of unwritten that you shouldn't be watching the show to know that game could shoot out and they very easily could be the top plays. So I did just want to call that out. Like they're going to be 10% rostered each, right in that range, and 8 to 10% probably. And they're not a bad play. We're trying to find more lower end GPP plays that could hit.
Yep. Yeah. And
with that, I'm surprised. Since John's naming bad quarterbacks, I'm surprised he didn't name Russell Wilson too. Like, why not?
Oh,
but
no.
No, I do not want to play Russell Wilson. I would rather play Aaron Rodgers, and that's saying a lot.
John called out that game first in Vegas. I mean, it's clear that that's a game that you want to try to figure out and stack. And I think that, the key to it will probably be figuring out which Kansas City guy to stack that maybe isn't Travis Kelce, because who you're going to in Cincy, you're going to in KC with Kelce, right? So,
yeah, that's the issue, Ryan. I mean, he meaning Patrick Mahomes is so good at finding the open receiver that you just don't know from week to week who he's going to find. Over the past month, the only wide receiver who's had double-digit receptions is Juju. That was once. And then the first 7 weeks of the season, not one receiver had double-digit receptions. Now, obviously, Travis Kelce is the exception there, right? I mean, he's obviously the favorite guy. He's 7,900, but he's going to end up getting popular. But I think people are going to be double stacking this game, and they're going to look at it and say, I don't know who to go with. And as a result, I think, potentially they also could be under rostered. But Devin's point's a great one, and that is, that game's in play. If we don't necessarily call it out, it doesn't mean we think they're bad plays. It's kind of obvious.
Yep. Certainly more obvious than Mike White, Geno Smith, and some of the other guys we mentioned. All right. So I mentioned earlier that if Devin, goes full nice guy on us, we're going to lose our viewership. But I was serious with the YouTube likes and the comments. So please feel free to keep interacting with us there. We will. I will make it a mea culpa to interact a little more on YouTube. I know I should. Last couple Fridays have been a little bit rough, but we'll get out there. So please comment and like the videos and get in there and get in the mix. Don't be a troll. Leave that to Devin. I will move on to running backs here. Couple bits of news at running back. Running back, actually, a few bits of news because this is a tough thing on this slate. And I just want to preface this section by saying we're going to have some if-then statements here with this section because we've got some murky injury pictures here at running back. So Josh Jacobs, as we know, popped up with a calf injury late last week, then proceeded to have 300 yards from scrimmage and break slates. He's been limited in practice this week with that calf injury. So keep an eye there in case something falls apart there for him. Christian McCaffrey with his knee injury, quote, dodged a bullet. So it looks like he's going to have a full workload, which is a big deal because there's injuries around Christian McCaffrey now, right? So he didn't have the full workload the last few weeks. Now it looks like he possibly could, and then he came up with this knee injury. So let's take a look at Friday practice reports there. Raheem Mostert, former 49er, current Dolphin, playing against Christian McCaffrey's 49ers, missed the game last week with his knee. He was limited on Thursday. Looks like maybe he's trending back. He certainly wants to play against his former team. Joe Mixon, concussion protocol, also missed last week, but was limited Thursday. He's not yet out of the protocol, but it looks like he's trending that way. And then Michael Carter for the Jets with his ankle that he hurt last week, did not practice Wednesday or today, which is Thursday. Zonovan Knight and Ty Johnson filled in admirably for him last week, and they're both super cheap this week, but are we really, potentially wanting to go back there? So guys, lots to do at running back. John, let's start with you. Who are the safe plays at running back this week? Who are we just, who are we putting in there, right? And you laugh because there probably aren't any, right? Like, so what are we doing at running back?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's rough. Travis Etienne jumps out.
Who I also didn't mention, but has a foot injury and seems good, but yes.
Yeah, so he left the game early last week, and then I think Monday morning he was quoted as saying, "I'll be back, no worries." And I believe he's practicing. Is he practicing in full as of Thursday?
I'll look at that as you talk.
So he's a guy that this Jacksonville offense is leaning on, and Jacksonville has a 26-point implied team total, short road favorite. Has done everything that the team has asked of him all year, and he's cheap enough at 6,400 that I feel comfortable rostering him, assuming he has a full practice on Friday.
Limited today and yesterday.
Okay. But all signs point to him being a full go this week. That's the play that I feel good about. The other two names I have written are Josh Jacobs at 7,900. We've already talked about the injury situation there. He's as of today the highest points per dollar projection in my model, 22.2 points for $7,900. But you're going to have to monitor that injury situation. The other player, and I saved him for last because I'm curious to hear your collective thoughts, is in terms of points per dollar, the second highest on my board is Dameon Pierce at 2.8. And what's going on there? Because if you look at his usage over the past few weeks, his usage has gone down. In week 11, it looked to be an anomaly. But in week 12, his actual snap count went down. And so the question is, what's going on there in Houston? A few weeks ago, he was getting 27, 18, 24 touches. And even, 3 weeks ago, he was at 19. And now last week, he had 8 touches for 16 yards against Miami. What do you guys think about him? Because he's uber cheap at 5,900 against Devin's Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's been the game script, right? They fell behind 30-0 against the Dolphins in the first half. But I just wonder if they're like, hey, we're 1-9-1. We have this running back who has been pretty good, and do we need to run him into the ground like we had been earlier? He's a guy who didn't have big volume at Florida. What did he have? 119 touches in 2021. Do they really need to give him 300 touches this year?
My local buddies here will just say that's because Dan Mullen sucks as a coach, but it's true.
But
it's true nonetheless. No, in your point, I'm just shouting out.
It's sort of like the baseball reference, right? Where like, hey, a pitcher's never thrown more than 120 innings. Are we really going to throw him for 220? What's the point when you're 1-9-1? And in a GPP, sure, but I think he's going to get popular, and I don't know that he should be. The Browns' defense sucks. It's horrible. Their linebackers are atrocious. The only way for the Texans to win this game is probably on the back of Dameon Pierce. But do the Texans even want to win this game? I don't know. But they do own the Browns' first-round pick, so maybe they do. But I just don't know where the Texans are at as a team, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the more succinct way to say what you're saying is, if Dameon Pierce beats me this week, I'd rather him beat me while on other people's rosters than me lose with him on my roster.
I'll use John's percentages that he always uses. Do we think it's more than 50% likely that he's about to get back to his normal volume?
No.
Then I wouldn't play him in cash.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is why I led with him. I mean, I think he's going to be popular.
I think it's a fair question.
Yeah,
I've got him.
It's the question.
I've got him as number 4 most popular.
Yeah.
The player I did not name is David Montgomery at 6,200 in that game against Green Bay.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah, I think he's fine.
Yeah. I feel like I'd rather play him.
Green Bay, the way to beat Green Bay is on the ground. He had a huge game earlier this season on the ground. If Justin Fields is out, obviously that's a no. Like, I want no part of him because that entire offense stalls out. But if Fields is active, sure, why not? And with Fields active, I don't think Fields is going to rush for 80-plus yards with a hurt shoulder. Once again, what's the point?
Yeah. And Montgomery, unlike Pierce.
Oh, we lost Ryan. So I'll go ahead and talk about running backs. So I think John mentioned some good names. One injury that we didn't mention was Antonio Gibson was ruled out of practice. He was limited on Wednesday, and then he was ruled out on Thursday from practice. So keep an eye there. I think if he's out, Brian Robinson against the Giants becomes incredibly popular at 5,300, almost a must play.
Yeah.
I do like the Travis Etienne call. David Montgomery is fine. Looking at GPPs a little bit, Aaron Jones, I think, is really interesting. I know that we talked about me not liking Aaron Rodgers. However, if we go back and we look at earlier this season, Aaron Jones had 15 carries for 135 yards and a touchdown against this Bears defense. The Bears rush defense is one of the worst in the NFL. So I think that he's in a good spot. I think Nick Chubb is in a really good spot this week at $8,000. I know he's expensive. Maybe he's more of a FanDuel play. Checking his price here quickly, but going up against Houston, that's allowing 158 yards rushing to opposing running backs on the season. He has 9,600 on FanDuel. That's too expensive. But at 8,000, I have him as the highest, most likely running back to top 100 yards this week, rushing, that is. Not going to give you a ton out of the passing game, but if he can get 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, I think that he's going to be a solid play. And then looking a little bit deeper here, it's so hard to spend up on DraftKings this week above that $8,000 salary because like Christian McCaffrey should be in a good spot at 86, but man, I don't know.
I'd rather play Eckler at 85.
Yeah. Fair.
Right?
Fair. Yeah.
If you're going there.
Give me Christian McCaffrey.
Over Eckler?
Yep.
He will be less popular.
Because of game theory purposes, not because of...
Okay. All right. Just not raw projection. Okay.
Correct.
Makes sense. With you there. Did not hear Kenneth Walker mentioned. The guy's role is crazy. He's getting everything in Seattle, and he's playing against a Rams team who stinks. And Aaron Donald won't be there to help solidify what is typically a good Rams run defense. So any thoughts on Kenneth Walker, 7,000 at the Rams? Devin, you hated Geno Smith because it won't shoot out, but if it doesn't shoot out, are the Seahawks just going to win?
I like Geno Smith.
Oh, no, sorry. John hated Geno Smith. My bad.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker's another guy who's seen his volume sort of decline over the last 2 weeks, 14 carries and then 10 carries over the last 2 weeks. So at 7,000, I don't know that I'm going there in cash, but as a GPP play, I think he's more than fine.
Okay. John, any thoughts there? Anyone else? Walker or anyone else?
Walker, I think, is going to be too popular for his projections. CMC was a guy I was going to talk about. This week you can spend up to be contrarian. I talked about Jalen Hurts at quarterback, and I'll talk about CMC at running back. I have no idea why the 49ers leveraged the future of that franchise for Christian McCaffrey to give him the ball 10 times a game. But now their arm, their hand may be forced with the injury to Elijah Mitchell. And so we may actually see traditional CMC in the way that Carolina used him this week against Miami, 8,600. I've got him somewhere in the 10% likely to hit GPP threshold, and I think he'll be owned in about half of that. So that makes him a solid play for tournaments. The name that we should at least talk about, because people are going to be wondering. I know I was wondering, and Devin, I'm going to put you on the spot because you're the college guru. This Zonovan Knight. What do we know about Zonovan Knight? He likely could be the guy in New York, that being the Jets in the backfield there. He's only 4,600. He's going up against Minnesota. Minnesota's midway through the pack. They gave up a pair of touchdowns to Zeke Elliott a few weeks ago. The week before that, they gave up a pair of touchdowns to Devin Singletary. So they're susceptible on the ground. The question is Zonovan Knight, does he have the level of talent to put up the numbers that we need in tournament formats at 4,600?
Admittedly, he wasn't a super strong prospect, but he's a guy who could he do it? He doesn't have huge breakaway speed, I think, is the problem. He only had one carry over 50 yards in college, which for a smaller running back, he's only 5'10", 200 pounds. You want to see more of a burst, but I mean, he caught 20 passes in each of his last 2 years. So like the 3 receptions that he had this past week weren't a fluke. It's so hard to tell because he wasn't even on my radar for like a guy that I was considering as a rookie.
Yeah. But Mike White moves them all the way up and down the field, and they get a couple of times at the 1 yard line,
And we've seen games where Michael Carter caught, what did he catch? 12 passes from Mike White last year. He caught some ridiculous number that Mike White has no problem checking down to his running back. So could Zonovan Knight catch 6 passes this week? Absolutely. I think that's definitely in the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it's interesting. If Michael Carter were out, right, if Zonovan Knight were 6K and Ty Johnson didn't exist, I might like him better than 4,600 and Ty Johnson does exist. Just from the pass catching perspective, it seems like they like Ty Johnson to do that. They could be behind in the game. And as Devin said earlier, you're not really running on Minnesota, which is Zonovan Knight's role. Seems to be a good early down guy. I think it's possible, John. I think it's a good question. The beat writers there, even before Michael Carter missed 2 practices this week, had said that he's going to carve out a role that they really like him. So, 4,600 is a low bar to clear. So,
yeah,
it's worth asking.
Salary relief. In this day and age, DraftKings has tightened things up. I think it's worthwhile. I was reading The Athletic. They're saying that he's basically James Robinson as a tough runner, but with a lot more juice, whatever that means.
Let me ask you a different question. Zonovan Knight and cash. 4,600. If he catches 3 passes and he gets 12 to 15 carries, sign me up.
It's
scary, but
I think it's entirely plausible. Right,
Yeah.
Right now, I've got his projections being a bit too low at about 10 points, but I think as things clear up tomorrow at practice, that could jump up to 13, 14 points. And if that's the case, I think you bring up a good point. He could be a salary saving option on DK. I don't know about FanDuel if he makes sense over there.
I don't think so.
I think, if you want to play Eckler, that's the way to feel good about it.
Or Brian Robinson, obviously, if Gibson is out.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Good talk at running back, which, again, this week is sort of the position. And the only apology we can offer here are not wrong picks, but that we record on Thursday and we don't have all the information because wrong picks are inevitable. So I just want to ask everybody again, subscribe, hit the bell, like the video. We're here for you. So reach out to us on Twitter and YouTube. We're going to move on to wide receivers now. Not a ton of news here. Just Mike Williams of the Chargers re-aggravated that ankle 2 Sunday nights ago, I believe. Didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, so he's not looking great at the moment. And then Richie James for the Giants was limited today with his knee. Had a nice game on Thanksgiving in a spot that it didn't seem like he was that healthy. Of course, it was a garbage time touchdown that got him there, but we are looking for cheap players, so thought it was worth mentioning. Let's talk about wide receivers. Devin, why don't you get us started? Who's your favorite wide receiver plays this week?
I'll let John go first, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably the most obvious, and I have him at 30% and probably a cash game lock this week at 7,100. But John can go ahead, and then I'll jump in from a wide receiver standpoint.
Yeah, cash games. Amon-Ra St. Brown is, I think he's the best play of the week. Probably be between 65 and 75% rostered in cash games on FanDuel DraftKings. Just below him, Garrett Wilson makes a lot of sense at 5,300. Boy, he looked good last week with a quarterback that was able to feed him the ball.
Who was that quarterback, by the way?
I don't know, Mike somebody.
Mike somebody.
And then I've got 2 other guys on my list. If you're going to spend up at wide receiver, and this is a question for you guys to be thinking about, who do you like if you're spending up this week? For me, it's Devontae Adams, 8,700 in a game that could go back and forth. He's a guy that's matchup proof in my eyes. He's kind of the luxury item at the position for cash games. And then my guy, Zay Jones. That was for you, Ryan, as he locks up. Zay Jones had a heck of a game last week. He finally, the optimizers finally got one right with Zay Jones last week.
Yeah, two out of 12, by the way.
But I think we can agree that at least on paper, he looks like a solid play this week at 4,900. In that Jacksonville-Detroit game I talked about at the top of the show, look, they're going to throw the ball. He's going to be a guy that continues to get receptions. Will he get 11? Probably not, but he doesn't need 11 at 4,900. So those are the guys I'm looking at for cash.
Play Christian Kirk instead.
No, I don't know about that. A couple guys for me. Cash, yeah, a couple guys for me. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is a lock. I think AJ Brown, 7,800. You have the narrative of going up against his former team in Tennessee, who have one of, if not the best run defenses in the NFL. Their pass defense is more than suspect. So I think the way for Philly to win this game is through the air. And you know that if extra motivation or if narratives were ever a thing, this would certainly be a bit of a motivation going up against that Tennessee team that traded him. Keenan Allen at 6,500, I think, is a fine cash game play if you can get there. I like Garrett Wilson better, but it seems too low for Keenan Allen. And then a couple GPP plays this week. I like Deebo Samuel at 6,600. Not really a Deebo Samuel guy, but what if Christian McCaffrey does stay at 10 carries per game? Who is the other running? What if Christian McCaffrey gets hurt early on in the game? Who's the other running back that they likely would turn to, which would be Deebo Samuel, going up against a Miami defense that has been hit or miss this year. So as a GPP play, I think that he's certainly fine. Amari Cooper, I think that he's in a good spot this week. What?
I'm floored because it's the first time all year I've had DPJ on my GPP list, and you're Mr. DPJ. And DPJ is going to be rostered on half the amount of rosters that Cooper's on.
But Michigan beat Ohio State, so
he's off.
No DPJ.
No. Amari Cooper, simply because if I look at Deshaun Watson's history, he has a propensity to target his number one receivers. Look, going back to DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, there's not you look, maybe it's because they had no other guys on those Houston teams. That's entirely plausible.
What about Kenny Stills? Wasn't Kenny Stills kind of DPJ-ish?
Kenny Stills and
not on Houston. Maybe in New Orleans.
You're thinking Will Fuller, but yeah.
Will Fuller.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so could DPJ catch a long pass? Absolutely. But I think Amari Cooper comes out and has I think they're both fine GPP plays, to be honest. I think if you want to target DPJ as a low-end guy, I think that's totally fine. Because Nick Chubb is going to be somewhat popular this week. In the pivot off of Chubb is to pair Watson with one of those guys. And then just going down the list one last time. I'm good. I'm good.
So can I not interest you in a T. Higgins is still underpriced? Actually, his price went up.
Not with Jamar Chase coming back.
I know. I'm being mostly facetious there, but yeah, it's interesting with the pricing there. There's a lot of guys in that 6,000 range that look pretty appetizing. I mean, you mentioned Keenan Allen, which I agree with if you're looking for that safety blanket. Devontae Smith, who John talked about earlier, at 6,200. If you really are playing Zay Jones because you think Jacksonville is going to do anything, I still just think the only actual good receiver on that team is Christian Kirk, and he's 6,300. Amari Cooper 6,400. So there's still a lot of guys out there. You want to go a little lower. Terry McLaurin 5,800. I don't know that game shoots out, but feels like a guy who gets a lot of targets per dollar. I don't know what kind of metric that is, but seems like a guy that gets more than a $5,800 receiver should. So he was interesting to me too. I don't know what you guys think about that. Probably not enough upside there to tickle your fancy, but I agree with the Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra St. Brown calls. Those were the first two guys that jumped out at me. Anyone else that we missed here, guys, at receiver?
Hold on. So one question. Darnell Mooney is out for the Bears.
Don't say Chase Claypool. Don't do it. Don't even say it.
So I was gonna ask the question a different way, Devin. I've already gone on record saying I like Aaron Rodgers. Pair him up with Christian Watson, double stack the tight end Tunyon. Who do you run it back with on the Bears side?
You don't.
Is it Cole Kmet?
Yeah, probably.
Well, I mean,
don't play Tunyon and you run it back with Kmet, but it's Chase Claypool will disappoint you. He just will.
Is this a disgruntled Steelers fan?
No, the guy sucks. He's terrible. He's not good, and he doesn't care about football. This is like he sucks.
If that game does shoot out, and I made an argument for it earlier,
it's because Justin Fields runs for 100 yards.
Okay. But okay.
I mean, I'm happy to be wrong.
Claypool's 3,800. Does he have a 5-catch, 60-yard and a touchdown game in him?
So the other wide receivers in Chicago, Byron Pringle, Dante Pettis, Equanimous St. Brown, Trevin Wesco. Like Claypool is the best receiver on that team.
Yeah.
But that's damning with faint praise. Byron Pringle scored a touchdown last week.
Byron Pringle's been cut by like 7 teams.
He scored I don't even know if that's touchdown true, last week.
You know something's wrong when Devin and I are so locked in on a thought here.
I like Claypool. The other guy that's sub 4K that I do like is Kendall Hinton. He had 9 targets last week. The Broncos, we're talking sub 4K. If you want Justin Jefferson and Austin Eckler, you got to go with some of these low-end trash guys.
I get it.
I mean, with Jerry Jeudy out, like, who do they have to play for?
What can I throw one more GPP and then I'm done?
Yeah.
Devin, you talked about Narrative Street with AJ Brown going back home to Tennessee, or maybe he's not going home because they're playing here in Philly, but playing against his former team. Let's say that. Your guy, Devin, over the past few years is playing against his former team. That is DJ Chark, playing against Jacksonville. Last week, Chark got 73% of the snaps. He was right there with Khalif Raymond and right behind Amon-Ra. Amon-Ra is going to be crazy popular. I wouldn't be surprised to see if he ends up being 35% rostered. And as a result of that, DJ Chark could go overlooked. I've got him at about 15% likely to hit GPP value and currently at 4 to 5% ownership, which makes him a really strong play at 3,800, the same price that Chase Claypool is, by the way. And Ryan's already buying into this. He'd rather
100 out of 100 DJ Chark.
Yeah, I'm not spending any time talking about these two guys.
No, Chase Claypool sucks. I didn't realize he was only 3,800. I guess that changes things, but is he the only second round pick ever to get traded for a second round pick a year and a half later? Like, that's so bad. I guess it's
Trent Richardson was traded for a first round pick, but yeah,
was he? Okay. I guess that's tantalizing talent, but he's the most unrealized talent.
I mean, you can make the case the Bears significantly overpaid by paying a second round pick.
For sure. It was a great trade.
And that
Steelers.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, too much time on $3,800 guys. Although I get why we're doing it. Again, this is in the vein of we're not talking Chiefs Bengals because we know who the plays are in that game.
Yep.
So we do want to offer, some alternative guys. We also just want to mention every guy on the slate. So inevitably we're right at some point. So make sure you comment on that on the YouTube. Tell us that we mentioned too many guys or not enough, since that seems to happen too. Guys, let's move on to tight ends. I saw a thing on Darren Waller today. They're unsure about him in week 13. Yeah, I'm unsure that he's going to play. I'm actually sure he's not going to play, it would seem, in week 13. So The more interesting one there for me was Devin's guy, David Njoku, who has had an awesome season, but a little injury plagued. He has a knee injury right now. He didn't practice Thursday, and the report was that it's a different knee issue than before, and then he had an ankle issue before. So keep an eye on him. Came back last week, made a tremendous catch, played a lot of snaps. So he's a guy worth considering if he's healthy, but let's make sure he is first before we put him in. What do you guys like at tight end this week? I know we're calling out high dollar plays everywhere else to the point that we're talking about Chase Claypool, but we need a low end tight end that we're going to play. So who's it going to be?
Travis Kelce.
That's not a low end tight
Devin,
end, but
Devin stole
are you fitting Travis Kelce in a cash lineup?
In a cash, I mean, here's my argument for it.
He's just a wide receiver.
Travis Kelce has scored 100 more DraftKings points than the second closest tight end.
Yeah.
Like,
it's pretty stupid.
We talk every week about like, hey, maybe this guy can go like 3 for 30 and maybe he can catch a touchdown. Travis Kelce's like, hey, I'll score like 13 more points than that every single week. In a cash game setting, we've talked about it for years, but the model is broken. And it's broken because they have a theoretical cap on the tight end position. There's no reason that Kelce, if we're talking about true premiums of a position, should be $1,000 cheaper than Justin Jefferson. If I think about Justin Jefferson compared to the 15th best wide receiver and the differential there compared to Travis Kelce and like the third best tight end, the gap is massive. And in a cash game format, I think I'm paying up for Kelce, and I'll pay down for hopefully Brian Robinson opens up, or hopefully Zonovan Knight opens up, or maybe I play Mike White in cash. But I think the differential you get from Kelce compared to the next closest tight end is just massive.
Yeah, and I think that if you were only playing one wide receiver instead of three, that logic absolutely lines up even better than you lined it up.
Yeah,
right?
But he's still $1,000. I mean, when was the last time Travis Kelce was above 8K on DraftKings? I can't remember it.
I don't know. Probably.
It seems like it maybe he was, but like he's not getting to that 9K that Cooper Kupp was a few years ago, and that's or last year, and that's sort of the difference that we're seeing between him and the next closest tight end.
I mean, I think there's talks this year about how DraftKings pricing is such that we've had to flex tight ends even in cash. And we're talking about flexing $2,000, $4,000 guys. I think the only time you flex a tight end is when one is Travis Kelce. And then you go super cheap and you do okay with like Garrett Wilson's at wide receiver. John, what are your thoughts on Kelce and others?
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with anything Devin said about Kelce. He was 8K, by the way, in week 7. He was exactly 8K. But your sentiment is still correct.
Yeah.
On the low ends, the player I would reluctantly consider is Evan Ingram, 3,000 Jacksonville, third highest implied team total on the week. He really doesn't need to do a whole lot to get you there, but then again, he hasn't done a whole lot all year. In terms of value, he's the 1, 2, 3, 4. He's the 5th highest point per dollar value on the board. And because he's so low on the salary chart, I tend to believe it less. Typically those guys that are higher priced, when they give you value like Amon-Ra, those are more reliable. It's the whole H value thing. If you don't know what H value is, look it up on our site. It effectively will explain why a guy like Evan Ingram is extremely risky. Outside of him, Njoku, if he plays, I think is okay for cash. And then Ryan, what do you think about your guy there in Pittsburgh? He's getting increased usage. I think he's the 5th highest targeted tight end in the league right now. He's had 9, 7, 7, 12, and last week 4 targets. What about Freiermuth?
Yeah, I like Freiermuth better when the other team can challenge Pittsburgh to speed up and throw more. And I think you can kind of see that in his game logs. So if we look back just a few weeks, the Philly game was 4 for 57, and that was just a blowout. Miami, before that, he caught 8 for 75. Miami, can run it up. The New Orleans game that Pittsburgh won, I think 20-10, he was only 4 for 36. Cincy game, it spiked, right? Joe Burrow threw for 1,000,000 yards, and Freiermuth had 8 for 79. Sorry. And then last week in the slog that was Monday Night Football, he only went 3 for 39 on the 4 targets you mentioned. So Atlanta is a weird team, right? All their games have high totals because their defense stinks, but all they want to do is run the ball. So if Atlanta and Pittsburgh get into this game where all they both want to do is run the ball, I don't see it going back and forth very much. I think Freiermuth is very reliable. Like, you're going to get 6-7 targets. Just 4,300 at the position, given the context of everybody else there, seems like a lot. I would rather, I think, spend less and spend more somewhere else.
Yeah, he's
super safe, but you're just I just don't think you're going to get a lot.
This is my least favorite position this week, and for the past
week.
2 to 3 weeks, I think there's been a lot of value here, but I think this week there's more value elsewhere. It's a week that you don't want to play 2 tight ends.
No. I mean, listen, am I spending 900 more to play Freiermuth than I am Greg Dulcich? Yes, because I'm so tired of Broncos. But I've played Greg Dulcich way too much because he runs routes, but that doesn't mean anything when he doesn't get the ball and nobody scores.
He's Tyler Higbee.
No, he's way, way, way worse than Tyler Higbee.
For sure he is. The only other name I'll mention again, Cole Kmet, has shown a propensity to have upside. So
yeah,
it's the second time I've used that word, so I need to stop using it. But with Justin Fields, he's shown that what's weird is Cole Kmet seems to be, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but no one is around him within 20 yards. And Fields scrambles, the play collapses. He just runs a streak. And he's caught 2 long passes this year. If Fields is healthy, why not?
Why not?
But play Travis Kelce.
Yeah, it's just tough to find the space. I don't hate Logan Thomas either. 2,900. It's super, super cheap punt.
Can I admit something?
Please.
I didn't know Logan Thomas is still in the league.
That's why he's 2,900, buddy. Logan Thomas got fewer receptions and targets than someone named John Bates last week, but he did play 71% of the snaps, which was more than Bates did. And that game was very rainy and weird. But 2,900, the guy's super athletic. If you're punting, which, I like to do at tight end, you could do a lot worse. And the Giants have allowed the 5th most points to tight ends. And they haven't even really faced that rough a schedule. They just gave up 2 touchdowns to Dalton Schultz while we were all eating turkey a week ago, I should say. So not the worst there, Logan Thomas. So guys, let's move on beyond tight ends, because we're again dipping below 3K and talking too much about those guys. So let's move on to final thoughts. Anything we haven't covered? Or no, sorry, defenses. My goodness. Defenses first. Devin, why don't you get us kicked off on defense, which based on my skipping over it is a really important position.
Yeah, I'm looking at a couple teams that are cheap. So Miami at San Francisco. Mike McDaniel faces his former team. He should know how to create a game plan to stop this team, or at least hold them in check. And then the Broncos defense has been decent. And if there's one team that you see, Mike Purcell getting in the face of Russell Wilson, this defense still cares. And at 2,300 against Lamar Jackson, it's not like Lamar Jackson has been lighting the world on fire the past couple of weeks. So I think at 2,300, they're a decent defense. I'd rather them being at home, but such is life.
All right, John.
For me, it's probably the Steelers. They're 2,600 going up against Marcus Mariota. He lost his best, or I don't know, maybe it's not his best, but he lost Kyle Pitts last week.
Oh boy,
a guy they never used, but yes, yeah. The point remains.
So who's going to throw it to this week? What's he going to do? Looking, and TJ Watt is back. I like the Steelers this week at 2,600 in cash games as a cheap option that I think reaches value.
Yeah, I agree. Anything GPP thoughts there on defense? Or are we just fitting it in around?
For me, I like both defenses. Sorry, Devin. I like both defenses in Seahawks Rams.
Okay.
I think both of them are in play. The Rams, I think they're allowing the second most. Let me make sure I'm right about that. Second most points per game to opposing defenses in terms of fantasy. Actually, they're tied for first with Indianapolis. So Seahawks 3,600. I think not many folks are going to take them. They won't spend up. That's how I like to be contrarian at this position. So I like them, and I like the other defense as well. I think the Rams against Geno Smith. I know Devin loves Geno this week, but I think you could do worse.
The key to GPP defenses is getting a wheel and writing every team on it and then spinning it, and that's who you play.
Regardless of price. All right, let's move on to final thoughts. Devin, with as prescient as that was, I'd love you to kick us off here.
No, it's good to be back. I think that it's two weeks off, and we talked. This slate could entirely change over the next 48 hours. We talked about Antonio Gibson. We've talked about a number of running backs that have been questionable. The other thing I would say is it's a good time to jump back into DFS if you're not playing it. A lot of new players are jumping back in because of the season-long. Their season-long may have been over. Or they may have been eliminated. Over the next couple of weeks, you're going to see some newer players that started early on in the year that come back week 14, 15, 16, particularly in cash games. So if you're not playing DFS, it might be a good time to jump back in because it is a little bit softer competition this time of year.
Absolutely. John?
I don't know. I was just looking. I know people, I talk a lot about mass multi-entry. That is 150 lineups into various contests. I love playing it because it's basically I build a portfolio of players every week. And so every player we talked about on this show, for the most part, I will have some of that individual. And I know that sometimes I disenfranchise people because, many people just play one lineup. But if you are into mass multi-entry, DraftKings does run every week the quarter jukebox. You can search it, jukebox, JUKEBOX. And you can enter 150 lineups for about $35. And I think, it's a lot of fun. And we do have a lineup generator on the site. And, if you want to give it a go one week, this week's as good as any. For $37, you can win $1,500 if you come out on top.
I highly encourage everyone to build those lineups by hand.
Yeah.
And then you will understand the value of a generator, and you'll no longer complain about the $15 a month that we charge for our DFS services.
Yes, and for less than the price of 1 week of entering, you could have a month worth of a lineup generator. Very good call. I guess my final thought is, and we didn't talk a lot about this game from a DFS perspective. There's a lot of players in it that are high profile. They're also priced very high accordingly. But I'm just, as a football fan, really excited to watch Miami and San Francisco this week. You got Mike McDaniel returning, him and his offense, and Tua going back against Jimmy G, and it's just the whole thing. There's a lot of storylines there. I think that's just going to be an excellent football game. Fantasy football notwithstanding, I just think that'll be a good one, and I'm excited to watch it. So I guess with that said, I will once again congratulate our own Devin Knotts on a wonderful life milestone. Congratulations, buddy. We're happy to have you back. And with that said, on behalf of Devin and John Lee, I am Ryan Hester saying thank you for joining us. Thank you for commenting on YouTube, and thank you for being a football guy.